Hi everyone. Welcome to Daily Recaps. Today, I'm going to explain a movie called The Final. Hope you like it. Enjoy the video and take care. The film begins as a girl, in a hood, enters a diner. She goes to the counter and orders a meal. The waitress notes her order, but then when she looks at her face, her expression changes. She catches herself staring a moment later and shifts her gaze. The girl pulls her hand out of her pocket to put the money on the counter, which reveals that she's missing 2 fingers. After that, she goes to sit at a table, but all heads seem to be turning as they notice her face unable to take it. She yells at them and tells them to stop staring as she flips the table over in frustration. Next, we're transported to a high school where Bradley enters his classroom and sits behind a shy student named Ravi. Bradley slaps Ravi on the head and begins to bully him. When the teacher notices this, he tells Bradley that he needs to switch seats with Bernard. However, as he takes a seat behind Ravi, Bernard reveals himself to be just another of Bradley's friends. He also slaps his head. The popular girls, Heather, Bridget, and Kelly, are then introduced. As they walk down the corridor, they come across Emily, who is standing next to her locker. They surround her and start bullying her. When she asks why they're always so mean, they remark that they're nothing but honest, feeling extremely hurt. Emily pushes her way past them and leaves near a secluded house in the woods. Dane is checking the bear traps laid out on the lawn. A war veteran, Parker, who lives near the property, approaches him and asks him about his uncle. Workley Dane tells him that his uncle died and left the house to him. Parker pays him his condolences. He tells him he'll be there for him if he needs anything and leaves at night while Emily is sitting in her room. She gets a call from Ravi. She tells him she's watching a movie he sent and remarks, "It's gruesome and disgusting, hence perfect." The next day, at school, the outcasts sit at a table discussing their plans for revenge. The populace who's sitting at the next table throw a milk carton at them. As the milk splatters all over the outcasts, they cheer and laugh. Ravi takes the carton to their table and sits down. He simply places it in front of Bernard, who mocks him once more. The others burst out laughing, embarrassment on their faces. Ravi moves on. Curtis, a likable student and inspiring actor, approaches the outcast table and enthusiastically informs them that he has an upcoming shoot and invites them to attend. Outcasts congratulate him and appear pleased for him. Curtis then asks Ravi if he can bring his camera and shoot some behind-the-scenes footage for him, which Ravi gladly accepts. As he walks away, the outcasts collectively decide that Curtis isn't one of the bad ones, and he must not be part of the revenge. As Heather is getting ready in her room, her friends learn through a text message on her phone that she's hooking up with Tommy, a guy who's in a relationship with another classmate called Nadia. When they ask Heather about it, she tells him to strictly keep it a secret. They cheer her on and laugh about it. While he's at the shoot with Curtis, Ravi goes outside to clean his camera lens. When Bradley and Bernard see him, they begin to bully him. As Bradley takes his camera and breaks it, Bernard holds him back. Dane emerges a few moments later, shocked to see it trashed. When he asks if they trashed it, Bradley tells him yes and grabs him by the shoulders. When asked what he'll do about it, he tells him he'll do it to them, because he knows they won't be able to stop him. As they leave, the bullies laugh and joke. Dane puts Ravi on the shoulder, telling them their time will come. The next day, at school, Ravi apologizes to Curtis for not being able to do the shoot. As he asked, Curtis tells him it wasn't his fault, and then goes to Bradley, confronting him and telling him to leave Ravi alone. They both end up in a physical fight, which the whole school watches, while cheering as his parents are heard fighting in the background. Dane puts a gun to his head, unable to take the agony of life anymore. However, he quickly decides against it and tells himself that he will not be afraid. With his estranged family, Ravi sits at the table. Like a knife, the silence and lack of comfort and compassion cut into him. While Jack's father is working on his car, he informs him that he is leaving, but the father is unconcerned and responds with a joke. When Jack and Dane meet up, they both prepare their weapons. The outcasts gather around a bonfire at night to talk about their difficult lives and family problems. They express their joy by remarking that all of their problems will be resolved soon. Next, we're taken to Dane's house in the woods, where the outcasts have arranged a costume party for the bullies. The outcasts stand in a circle holding hands, praying to God to give them a sign if they should stop. When nothing happens, they put on their masks and head out to the main room. Students start slowly pouring in, and the whole place becomes lively with music and excited shrieks. They notice Curtis has also come to the party. Ravi tells them he'll go talk to him, but Dane refuses to let him. He says if he came, he shall stay. He then declares it's time and tells the boys no one must leave. Then they lace the punch bowl with a drug meant to induce drowsiness as the partying people drink it up. They slowly start falling asleep. One by one, the outcasts get out of their costume and get into different menacing ones. Students collect and store their car keys before heading outside. Dane uses a high-pitched frequency note to wake up the sleeping students who have all fallen asleep on the ground. The bull is thus wake up to find themselves in chains. They start taking in their surroundings and confusion, wondering what's happening to them. The masked Dane declares their intention to torture them using a voice manipulator. As retaliation for the years, a fate worse than death. They have been bullied, and one of the students, Miles, makes a witty remark that makes the others laugh at a response. The outcast shoots him in the knee with a cattle gun, and the laughter fades away, replaced by fear and desperation in his face. As the terrified students begin to cry, Dane taunts them, saying they must understand the gravity of the situation now. He then asks if anyone wants to leave. Tommy raises his hand and asks to take his girlfriend Nadia with him. Dane says he'll go alone and has his chain removed. Tommy is led to the door and told that he is free to leave. He tells Nadia he loves her and promises to bring back help as he heads out. Once he's left, Dane tells his girlfriend Nadia that she must believe her boyfriend loves her immensely. He then tells her that that's not the case as he reveals that he had been cheating on her with Heather. Heather looks back at Nadia not saying a word, thus confirming it as Tommy is running through the woods to get to safety. The outcasts give chase. Tommy catches his foot in a bear trap and collapses. The severely injured Tommy is then brought back by the outcast and placed in a room. Next to Miles on the floor, Bradley starts crying and says they're all going to hell. In response, Dane tells them he's already there, implying that these bullies have made his life a living hell. Dane then instructs Jack to perform a banjo solo for the bullies. As a special treat, Ravi approaches Bernard with a vial in hand. Bernard starts cursing and swearing at him, in frustration earning him a knife in the shoulder as Bernard screams in agony. Ravi pours the liquid in his mouth. As a result, Bernard collapses to the ground and starts having convulsions. His movements come to a halt a split second later. The restraints are removed, and Ravi's arms are placed by his sides. On his way back, he passes Curtis and throws a key beside him. Bernard is now paralyzed, according to Dane. He is unable to move, but he will be aware of everything they do to him. Emily then straddles Bernard with needles in her hands. Before pushing the pin into Bernard's flesh, she shows it to everyone. She pushes one needle at a time for a while, his body convulsing with each attack at the end. She slams her fists into his chest in a flurry. She then gets up and takes a bow. Before she leaves, Bernard's body is then taken away. To the other hurt one, a masked Tandy then roams the area with an axe trying to choose his next victim. Curtis manages to free himself on the restraints and makes a run for it. Dane attempts to shoot him, but he is tackled to the ground by Ravi. Dane subdues Ravi and removes his mask. Ravi claims that Curtis never hurt them and instead stood up for them, but Dane tells him that he has betrayed the group and then stabs him in the chest, instantly killing him. When the other outcast sees this, he is shocked. Emily rushes over Travi's side, and a condensed Dane simply declares that none of them are exempt from the consequences of their actions. Curtis rushes outside, where he discovers a deputy hiding in the woods. He asks him for help, however the deputy is shortly killed by one of the outcasts. Curtis takes the deputy's gun and runs away. Andy and Jack, who are now chasing Curtis, approach the deputy on their vehicles. Back in the house, Emily is sitting beside Ravi's body laid on a bed, as Jack comes inside. Emily says Dane did not have the right to do this, but Jack says they have to finish what they started. Heather is now gagged and restrained to a chair. At the front, Emily smears a corrosive compound on her face as Dane explains how it was slowly painfully eat at her flesh. Andy informs Dane about the deputy, who makes the announcement in a taunting way, saying Curtis wanted to get help but failed. Bradley calls Dane a coward for hiding behind a mask. Dane approaches him and tells him that it's actually a representation of what he made them into, a monster. Bradley asks to see his face, to which Dane pulls off his mask, saying he must know who changed his life forever. Dane then tells him that he wanted to live his whole life in darkness, but by not letting him do that, Bradley actually empowered him. While running, Curtis comes across Parker's house. He begs for help, however, seeing the gun in Curtis' hand, Parker refuses to trust him and knocks him out. Emily then approaches her next victim, Bradley. Bradley starts begging her not to hurt him. A guy in a corner, Riggs, tells Bradley not to give them the pleasure by begging, but the terrified Bradley continues to beg. Bridget tells Emily that she knows who she is. Emily pulls off her mask, and the other outcasts follow her, pulling off their masks as well. Bridget apologizes to Emily for the way that she mistreated her. As a result, Emily tells her that she'll spare her if she cuts off Bradley's fingers. Bridget has now been restrained to the chair by the outcasts. They urge Bradley to cut off her fingers, threatening him with a gun. Bridget begs him not, but he tells her he has to. If he doesn't, they'll hurt him instead. Emily then gags Bridget as Bradley cuts off one of her fingers. The outcasts look at him, enjoying their pain, and fear. Dane tells Bradley he knew he may injure someone in order to save his own skin, and he is urged to go ahead. As Bridget lets out muffled screams, Bradley cuts off another finger. Emily then leans down and tells Bridget to save herself from all this pain. It's only a matter of inflicting it on someone else. Bridget nods when she is asked if she will do it. Curtis Parker, after a little more prodding, decides to leave him restrained in the house and investigate Dane's house himself. Bridget has taken a seat next to Bradley, who is restrained in his chair. When she hesitates to cut his fingers, Dane tells Emily to give her a bit of inspiration. Emily approaches Bridget with the corrosive compound and smears it over half her face, saying if she cuts Bradley's fingers off, she'll remove the compound. Before it starts to eat away at her face, Bridget puts the cutter to Bernard's finger, but then drops it, saying she can't do this. Emily tells her she'll now have to suffer for her decision as the compound slowly starts burning her skin. Parker roams the wood near Dane's house looking for suspicious activity when he suddenly falls into a trap, which makes a board of knives pierce through his thighs. He wails in pain, attracting the attention of an outcast who had been keeping watch outside. Back at Parker's, Curtis manages to free himself. He pulls out a gun and calls the cops, reporting a robbery at Dane's. Bridget drops to the ground, her face completely burned by the corrosive. We're then taken back to the woods, where Parker has managed to kill the outcast and is now crawling away. She's then pulled away to be placed by the other victims. Dane then approaches Bradley on the chair and tells him that they couldn't come up with a punishment that would make his crimes look like they didn't happen. He couldn't be satisfied with anything he thought of, but he had finally found a suitable punishment. Dane doesn't budge, so Bradley stabs him in the back with a knife and tells him that he'll never enjoy playing his favorite games again, and he'll never enjoy the pleasure of sex. He then sinks the knife into Bradley's back, severing his spinal cord and rendering him paralyzed from the waist down. An outcast discovers a dead man in the woods who was killed by Jack. A few feet ahead, he sees Parker similarly laying on the ground. He kicks him to see if he's alive, but his body appears to be lifeless. He leans beside him and tries to have a look at his face, but Parker stabs and kills him while Dane is making another speech about how the events of this night will change them and live on forever. Riggs gets enraged and starts throwing insults at the outcasts, infuriated by his behavior. The outcasts surround Riggs as Dane declares him the next victim. Curtis finds Parker leaning by a tree and asks him if he's okay. Parker tells him not to worry about him and go save the kids that are being held captive. Just as Andy and Jack are about to cut off Rick's tongue, Curtis bars Jim with the gun, telling them to stop. Dane tells Curtis to go away. They don't have an issue with him. Curtis tells Dane he's been his friend for a long time, but he can't let him do this because Riggs doesn't deserve it. Dane says he does and tells Annie to go ahead, but Curtis shoots Andy. Dane shoots Curtis in the shoulder, then approaches him with the gun pointed at him, as if he's about to kill him. Emily kills him and declares, "I've had enough." Emily hands the gun to Jack, who says he feels the same way. They hug Emily. Then he turns to Kelly, who is still sitting unharmed among the others. She tells her she just wanted to be friends, and then turns standing with her. Back to Jack. Jack puts the gun to her head and shoots just. Then the police enter the house and tell Jack to drop his gun. Jack puts the gun in his temple and tells the cops there are more of them out in the woods. The cops tell him not to do this, saying they can work something out, but Jack shoots himself and the screen fades out. A media reporter is then seen reporting the incident as a group of high schoolers kidnapping and hurting their fellow mates without reason. Curtis is seen walking on school grounds with a plastered arm. A traumatized Kelly decides to commit suicide, and the girl from the beginning is revealed to be Bridget. That's all from the movie. Thanks for watching. If you really want more interesting videos like this, then hit like and subscribe to support the daily recaps. See you again. Take care.